Hey there, this is Tulsa criminal defense attorney Stephen Cale. I'm going to talk to you today about the role of a criminal defense attorney. So let's get into that. Now, criminal law covers quite a variety of areas. You have statutory laws, for example. That's the law that prescribes or outlaws something. So those are set forth in state statutes, and some states they call them codes. And then you also have quasi-criminal actions. Quasi means apparently or seemingly, but not really. An example of a quasi-criminal action is what's called a victim's protective order. Now, in Oklahoma, a victim's protective order is set forth out in the statutes for it in the criminal procedure section of the state statutes. Now, but they also have civil procedures that apply to victims' protective orders. So that's why it's kind of a quasi-criminal matter. And then you have criminal-related matters. The best example of this is a civil asset forfeiture action. Civil asset forfeiture is when the government, such as the DA's office, the state highway patrol, a city police department, is trying to take somebody's property, usually because they say it's in connection with a crime that the owner has committed. So that's criminal related, but not really criminal. It's civil asset forfeiture, something I also practice with. And then you have constitutional law. Constitutional law deals with fundamental principles by which our government exercises its authority. It will set forth what the government can do. And one good example of that is the power to regulate commerce. That's in the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution. It also puts some prohibitions against the government. For example, there's constitutional limits on when the government can arrest somebody. And when I say government, I mean law enforcement. But it does apply to state and federal government as well. Now, why do you even need a criminal defense attorney? Well, Abraham Lincoln, the U.S. President Abraham Lincoln, you remember Honest Abe, he said that he who represents himself has a fool for a client. So you need a criminal defense attorney if you're facing criminal charges because you don't want to be a fool. It would be foolish for you not to get an attorney if you're facing criminal charges. Now, what is the role of a criminal defense attorney? Well, one of the roles is to provide specialized guidance. And by that I mean the average person doesn't really have a good understanding of the criminal justice system. Criminal defense is actually very complex. It's not simple at all. And so with a criminal defense attorney, he or she has gone to law school for 3, sometimes 4 years, has had to pass a rigorous bar exam. And some of the better criminal defense attorneys have been in practice for quite a long time. I've been practicing for going on 20 years. But for the best criminal defense attorney, you want somebody that's really dedicated and focused on that. And that's what I do. I focus my practice on criminal defense. So 1, specialized guidance. That's one of the roles of a criminal defense attorney. And then 2 is protection. You need somebody to advise you and to protect you. Now, sometimes somebody may need an attorney before even an arrest has occurred or even before a charge has occurred. A good criminal defense attorney can guide somebody on how to protect themselves, how to not make incriminating statements, how to stay out of further trouble and keep themselves from digging themselves in deep. It may even result in no arrest or no charges at all if somebody takes a preemptive strike, if you will, by hiring an attorney if he or she thinks that there was some kind of incident that could result in some kind of criminal action. It's always best to call a criminal defense attorney. By the way, if you haven't already, take a look at my top 10 reasons not to talk to police. You can find that on my website. You can read about it or see the video. And then third, the role of a criminal defense attorney is aggressive representation. You definitely want somebody that's going to be aggressive. Don't hire somebody that's just going to try to take your money, plea you out, and then run. You really need aggressive representation. I love fighting the prosecution, okay? I like fighting for my clients. Now, here's just a few of the strategies that I use in my representation of clients. One is the motion to dismiss. I look always to see if there's an opportunity to get the charge dismissed. Now, this can be done a number of ways. Sometimes it's by looking at the actual paper charge. In Oklahoma, it's called an information. And to see whether or not the prosecutor actually validly worded it right. I've had success in getting charges dismissed because it wasn't properly worded, or it doesn't state a crime. Sometimes you can get a charge dismissed because of prosecutorial misconduct. They haven't turned over evidence that they should have. Sometimes there's insufficient evidence, so you can do what's called a demur and motion to dismiss. That usually happens at the conclusion of what's called a preliminary hearing, a demur. And then sometimes there's actions that a client has done, conduct, that's actually protected by the state or federal constitution. And because of that, the charge is unconstitutional. I've actually had some success at getting a charge dismissed against my client on constitutional grounds. So you want aggressive representation. Secondly, some of the strategies I try to utilize is maybe the facts and the evidence aren't great against my client. And rather than go to trial, I try to get the charge reduced. That can mean either getting the charge reduced from a felony to a misdemeanor, or regardless of whether or not it's a felony or a misdemeanor, getting it reduced to some less serious crime. That's one of the things that I try to do also. That's one of the things that I can try to do as part of my aggressive representation. Also, I look for the opportunity to file a motion to suppress. This just simply means asking the court to kick out certain evidence obtained by law enforcement. Usually it's because law enforcement has either illegally seized evidence, conducted an illegal search, or even made an illegal arrest. Sometimes it can mean they coerced a confession. And by the way, take a look at some of my videos and articles on police tricks, including the psychology of false confessions. Really good information in there. And then another strategy, sometimes you just have to go to trial. Now, for misdemeanors, a jury trial will consist of 6 jurors. There might be some alternates for that, but the jurors that will hear the case and actually make the decision can be comprised of 6 people. For felonies, it's 12 people. Sometimes you just have to go to jury trial. Now, if the state when I say state, I mean the prosecution and the defendant agree, the case can be tried before a judge only. That's called a bench trial. So that's tried before a judge only. There's some advantages and disadvantages to that. Won't really discuss that right now. But so trial. Now, if you have a trial, sometimes a judge or jury doesn't get it right. So there may be an opportunity to file a motion for a new trial if the judge or jury doesn't get it right and you've been convicted. And sometimes if that doesn't work, there's always an appeal. That's kind of the last resort. If you are going to do an appeal, you want somebody that's very skilled at writing. That's what appeals consist of, submitting written briefs. Sometimes there's some oral argument. I'm a former journalist. I like writing. Judges have commented to me how well some of my briefs are. And so you want somebody that's really skilled at writing, okay? So that's the role of a criminal defense attorney. It's to provide guidance, specialized guidance, protection, and aggressive representation. So if you've been charged with a crime or you know somebody that has, give me a call. I'm Tulsa criminal defense attorney Stephen Cale. Give me a call at 918-277-4800. That's 918-277-4800. I would love to hear from you. Your initial consultation is free, and I promise you, if you hire me for your charge or your appeal, I will fight hard for you. Give me a call.